Hi. We've done 253 to 201 in the last video, so it's time to jump on 200 to 151. And since C64 had countless amazing games, prepare to witness some truly fun and well-playing experiences. Kickstart is a simulation 2-player off-road bike racing game in which you and a friend get to complete increasingly more demanding stunt tracks for the best time. And if I was to compare it to something more well-known, I'd say it's like Excitebike on NES, only much more demanding, but also more rewarding when you master the controls. Or like Trials on Xbox and PlayStation, but in 8-bit format. If you enjoy this kind of challenges, Kickstart is definitely one to keep an eye on, and especially if you have someone to play it against. LeMans is a C64 exclusive and racer/point score attack kind of a game, meaning that your goal is to overtake plenty enough cars within 60 seconds to acquire 20,000 points and extend your playtime by another minute. It's a very arcade-like design, giving you very little time to secure progression, but at that time most games either came from or were inspired by the arcades, so it's hard to fault it for that. Despite LeMans' rather simple graphics, it looks sleek and clean, and the night driving effect is rather spectacular, at least for 1982. Believe it or not, but the arcade kit Kung Fu Master and its port that you're watching now is actually based on the movie of the same title. Very loosely, mind you, as it serves literally no story other than the setup, but it is. So Mr. X has captured Sylvia the pickpocket, and now you, playing as Thomas, have to save her. Between you and her there's naturally a good 1,000 or so of enemies, so you will need to knock the F out all of them, and bosses that you'll face at the end of each level before you'll be able to save her. Kung Fu Master is one of those extremely basic in its design beat-em-ups that had a lot of charm back then, but now are a bit underwhelming to experience. Some may say that waggling your joystick till it disintegrates into a pile of plastic, springs and loose buttons is no way to form a gameplay for a video game, and in most cases I would agree. But every now and then, when it's well made, it's actually really fun. Combat School is one of those rare cases. It's an arcade port that puts its own unique twist on the multi-discipline sporting game genre by dressing it in a military attire. It's a variety of different army team disciplines that are fun when played alone and fantastic if you have someone to challenge. While Donkey Kong may have been the first game where Mario was the protagonist, it's actually Mario Bros. Where I saw him first. And truth be told, it's probably the Mario game that I have the most fond memories of. I used to play it with my parents first and then friends too, and it was a multiplayer blast like no other. Same as its most famous, unavailable officially on the C64 Super counterpart, Mario Bros. Is a platformer too, though of the single-screen variety. And playing as our plumber and his green-loving brother, you have to topple different enemies and collect coins. The mechanics of the game are rather simple, but the fun that it provides is through the roof. You could say that BC's quest for tires is a primordial runner. And yes, you've heard that right, runner as in what you would play in the early days of candy bar touchscreen mobile phones. So a game where a character keeps moving forwards and you have to help him, in this case our cave mentor, pass any and all obstacles and hazards to accumulate points. The background story stipulates that the cute chick has been kidnapped by the dino and that Thor has to save her. So you will jump or duck over many things along the way and you'll have a lot of fun. Spindizzy is an isometric arcade platform puzzler, though other than having to figure out how to complete each stage, there's very little of any puzzling involved. The idea here is to explore these semi-3D environments within given time by moving your ball around them. I say ball, but the object that you control can be transformed into other shapes too. The difference is only visual though, so you know, potato tomato. Either way, every time you fall off the grid, you lose a bit of time and you can extend it by collecting jewels. Certain similarities to Marble Madness are quite obvious in Spindizzy's design, but ultimately it's its own thing. Up and Down is a port of a pretty fun arcade game in which you drive a little buggy-looking car, collecting flags for points and jumping over hazards. It's all timed naturally, so to extend it, you have to keep appropriate pace of driving and grab the flags as fast as possible. You can also jump over cars and land on them for additional points. It's not a very complicated game mechanically speaking, but the fun factor is surprisingly high and I absolutely adored it on my C64. Funny enough, I don't think that it's a game that I would like to play in the arcades if ever given a chance, but on C64 I loved it. While I understand the importance and overall quality of the Duel Test Drive 2, and even more so its predecessor, I'm also one of the few people who actually never liked it, neither on C64 nor on PC or Amiga. It was just not a game for me. Either way, it's an early road racing simulation that puts you behind the wheel of one of few speedsters and sends you racing through checkpoints. The gimmick here is that you must stop to refuel manually and avoid the cops. Burnin Rubber is an unofficial arcade hit bump and jump clone and a futuristic top-down vertically scrolling action racer. There are no turns in the track and it only ever narrows and widens, making up for the lack of curves with different hazards, so stuff like potholes, breaks in the continuity of the road and sections that may require jumping over. Other cars on the road may try to push you off of it, but you can respond by doing the same or by landing on them when mid-air, which you actually should do as you are rewarded points for that. Cauldron II: The Pumpkin Strikes Back has the most fun title out of all games in today's video. In this second entry, however, you're not playing as the witch anymore, but as this gruntled pumpkin and you're seeking the evil hag to beat her ass. Why? Because she casted an evil spell on the enchanted forest and wiped all of your magical pumpkin brethren. Not unlike the first Cauldron, the enemies respawn rather fast, but this time they are even more relentless. And some of them cannot be shot at all, so you gotta move both fast and smart. Cybernoid II: The Revenge is a sci-fi flip-screen cavern shooter and the rightful successor to the first game. It's equally as fun title too, but also as difficult. So if the first one was a painful reminder of how you're not a teen anymore, this one's going to be no different. In fact, as you can see, I'm not using my own footage for it, as all you'd get to see if I was would be the 1 or 2 screens at most and me constantly failing in a myriad of ways. Unlike the first game, in Cybernoid 2 you're not on a grandiose mission to save the world or whatever, but have to recover cargo stolen by space pirates and scattered around the labyrinth of caverns filled with dangers. Rambo is best known for 3 things. Always wearing his red headband to any and all social events no less, from weddings through funerals to jungle massacres, for being violently allergic to t-shirts, and for never stopping, as in always flexing his muscles. Be it when eating a soup, holding an Uzi or wiping his ass, he's always at 100% flex. And his game on C64 is loosely based on his movie First Blood Part 2 and follows the top-down commando-like shooter formula. So you're running on the screen, killing constantly respawning bodies and having the fun of your life. Cause Rambo is a pretty sweet title. Frogger is a port of the arcade classic, and while it's a very simple game at heart, it's also a fantastic release and a near one-to-one recreation of the retro hit. Well, it's retro today, it wasn't back then. Oldish perhaps, but not retro. In Frogger you play as this small frog, or frogs really, and you have to cross from one side of the screen to the other, avoiding numerous hazards. Despite the arcade original displaying gameplay vertically on a side flip monitor, C64 version uses its standard orientation. And while in many cases it may have proved fatal to playability, Frogger is actually a really good port. Leadstorm is what happens whenever my PC freezes, forcing me to look inside it and get blinded by the orchestra of blinking lights that permanently burn their patterns in my brain. Yeah, I've stuffed that lights up inside, and no, I've not picked it because of that, but because of the good price offer. Either way, Leadstorm is also an arcade futuristic racer in which you're zooming around vertically set tracks, often suspended way over the city blocks. It's a fast, frantic and demanding experience, but also a rewarding one. Leadstorm features jumping, so when the situation on the track gets hard and heavy, you can always try to jump over other cars. And when you land on them, you get extra points, so it's a win-win either way. The Sacred Armour of Antiriad is an action-adventure Metroidvania-like game, also known as Rad Warrior. In 2086, the world is destroyed by a nuclear Armageddon-like event. Not many survived the outcome of the war, and those that did created a peace-loving, agriculture-focused society. The idle life is not something that the Earth has in the cards though, and one day, from an old formerly sleeping volcano, aliens emerged and enslaved most of the surviving humanity. So now you must find and uncover ancient old war battle armor and then use it to repel the extraterrestrial scum. I could say that for a versus fighting game, Yie Ar Kung-Fu is very simple, that it offers a limited selection of attacks, and that in single player you can only play as one rather generic fighter. I could, but I won't, as it being a port from the arcades and a fantastic one at that, it's a faithful recreation of the original. Personally, I actually like Yie Ar Kung-Fu, warts and all, and always have fun getting mauled by the considerably better than I C64 CPU. Zaxxon is an isometric scrolling shoot-em-up, and you guessed it right, once again a port from the arcades. And funny enough, what many people don't know, the original Zaxxon is the first arcade game ever to be advertised on television. But arcade is arcade, and C64 is C64, and its version, despite the platform's limitations, is very impressive indeed. It plays a bit slower than the original, which is great as it's just the right speed, and other than that, it recreates the arcade experience perfectly. The most notable feature of Zaxxon and its selling point is that you can actually control the height at which your craft is flying to avoid hazards and attack enemies at different elevations. When I was a wee lad, or for those unaware what that may mean, a young dude, I worked my fair share in pubs and bars, serving drinks, chatting up cute ladies and joking with my regulars. There is a charm to this kind of a work, and I have to say that it was one of the most fun that I ever had while working. It perhaps didn't bring me much money, but the experience was worth it. And Tapper on C64, unsurprisingly an arcade conversion, is a very early, very simple but also incredibly addictive bartender simulation. Or more accurately, a beer server simulator in which you have to send beer towards constantly advancing customers, thus keeping them content and far from your end of the bar. Because if they ever cross it, you lose a life. In 1988, when Operation Wolf graced our little beast of a machine, it was the definition of a first-person shooter. It was because we had no other games to take over the genre yet. It was this super fun and action-packed title in which you were shooting down armies worth of bodies like an indestructible machine of death that you are. They are approaching the screen from all sides, close and far, and also do it on foot and in different combat vehicles. But you don't care if they're alone, in groups, tanks or even jet fighters. You're a person, Commando and Rambo were based on, and a badass, likes of which the world had not seen. Highnoon is a solid, simple arcade fun and a game that lets you live out your best cowboy dreams. As in, being this Wild West fast gun fighting off outlaws and not a dude on a fat horse caring for cows. I mean, I don't know what you're doing outside of killing seemingly never-ending waves of bodies raiding your town, but I assume it's not cleaning stables. You're wearing a white suit after all. Anyway, I obviously exaggerated as there are only 5 waves of enemies, which repeat upon completion, getting tougher and tougher. Highnoon may be very simple, but it's decently fun. Karateka, a side-view flip-screen brawler, is so slow. It's also super smooth and beautifully animated using rotoscoping to reach such quality. And if it looks like a bit younger cousin to a more well-known game to you, Prince of Persia, it's because it was made by the same person, Jordan Mechner. Evil Akuma has kidnapped Princess Mariko, killed your friends and destroyed your town in a series of 3 unforgivable dick moves. Now, it may not be Highnoon or Operation Wolf, so you're not skilled with firearms, but you have your fists and legs, and they're as deadly as these appendages can be. In both how hard they hit and how stinky they are. Henry's House is a pretty good, early single-screen platformer. It is set in different rooms around Henry's house, and the goal of each level is to get to the exit. But to do so, you have to also collect all the items scattered around the level and a door key. And that last usually only ever appears after picking one of the regular items first. The levels are naturally chock full of clearly possessed household items like teapots, toothbrushes or coffee machines, and they're all out to get you. Tight controls, smooth and easy pickup gameplay make Henry's House a true C64 classic. Batman the Cape Crusader is the less famous entry about the Dark Knight on C64, but also a fantastic, even if completely different release. It's an adventure brawler mixture made in a very unique way. Its story is told by comic book panels, each corresponding to a different location and often with a comic book style caption in the top left. Previously visited locations are dropped below the active one and shaded out, making for a rather unique presentation. Combat is realized in a beat-em-up style, using punches, kicks and batarangs, and if I can be a bit critical about the game, combat is the weakest part of the entire experience, and I would prefer more adventure-like item collection and puzzle solving than it. But it is what it is, and what it is actually not that bad, just not perfect. I believe that Wonderboy on C64 is a perfect port from the arcades. Not only it looks and sounds the part, but also all the content found in the original has been faithfully moved to our little dream machine. I mean, all the levels, enemies, pickups, traps and bosses, everything. It also runs super smoothly and retained its addictive fun factor. So Wonderboy, aside from being one of my favorite C64 games, is also a title that always made me wonder why so many ports to the system were so underwhelming when this gigantic game not only was so great, but also a single load fitting entirely within C64's available memory. Having completed his previous adventure in Quest for Tires that we've spoken about at the beginning of this video, Thor is now seeking the meaning of life, whatever that may mean. No wait, I know what it is, it's 42. Anyway, what I know and he's looking for is seemingly hidden deep within the long maze of mountains. And to be able to advance from mountain to mountain, you have to collect 100 clams. I know, clams in mountains sounds ridiculous, but it's also a video game from the 80s, so seeking logic behind it is kinda pointless. Falcon Patrol II is a side-view action shooter and a follow-up to the game we've covered in the previous video. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's mostly the same game, with a difference that you mainly fight the enemy copters and not jet fighters. Your plane is still a vertical takeoff and landing craft, and you still have to land mid-combat to refuel and restock ammo. If you like the first one, you'll like the second as well, as while it's more of the same, it's more bearable and fun too. Talking about sequels to other games, Beyond the Forbidden Forest is a follow-up to Just Forbidden Forest and a C64 exclusive. For the most part, it's still the same third-person action shooter dubbed by the devs as the Omnidimension 4D because of how you move in and out of the foreground and fight the enemies in all directions. It's a technically more impressive game, but also more demanding and slower feeling one. Personally, I never liked Beyond's graphics, but I understand its public appeal and popularity. While Miss Pac-Man is my absolute fave, and the first sexy heroine of video gaming no less, this original game is also a fantastic playing arcade port and a mechanically simple but infinitely replayable title. If you've been living under the rock and somehow never heard of it, let me explain. Your goal is to navigate the maze, munching on pellets and avoiding ghosts. The stage is completed when all of the pellets are gone, and each next level is more and more difficult, featuring faster and more nefarious ghost enemies. Easy to get into gameplay and constantly increasing challenge made Pac-Man an instant hit on most systems it landed on, C64 unquestionably being one of them. Westbank is a home systems clone of Bank Panic, a game in which you're tasked with protection of a bank by keeping a keen eye on all of its doors. The 12 doors are in front of the 12 bank teller windows and you can see up to 3 at the time. And it's up to you to shoot all the robbers, all the while making sure not to mistakenly hit the innocents. That's it. No, really, it is. And it's also a reason why I never particularly liked Westbank, it was just too repeatable. Well, I mean, I can understand its score attack appeal, but given that I was never a Giga Chat, Omega Gamer or Hackerman, score attack games are usually not the ones I do well in. Trailblazer I actually liked, despite also not being very good at it, as it's another of those "let me teach you how you suck at gaming" games. It's a racing title of sorts in which you're controlling a soccer ball bouncing on suspended in space tracks. The gimmick here is that the tracks are made out of differently colored rectangles and each of them is functionally unique. Blue lets you jump, red slows you down, green speeds you up, white warps you, cyan inverts the controls, purple bounces the ball backwards, and black are holes. The key is to learn them fast and then twitch control your way through these light speed stages. Trailblazer can also be played in split-screen multiplayer, which is obviously a more fun way of experiencing it. While Pooyan is one of the earliest C64 games, and henceforth not using Beast's full technical capabilities just yet, it's still a really addicting port of equally as good arcade original. You're a pig. Well, not you, but the character you play as definitely is. The game is composed out of 2 interchangeable rounds. In first, you have to protect your piglets by shooting wolves down who are slow falling using balloons. If they manage to land safely, they'll try to climb the ladder and get you. In second, the wolves are using the balloons to ascend to the cliff to push the rock off its edge, and they too have to be given an arrow to the knee treatment for you to succeed. Cosmic Causeway is a sequel to Trailblazer, and mechanically the same game with some tweaks and changes to the formula. For one, it's only single player now, and as a result of that, the entire screen area is available to be utilized for the track, and the game uses it smartly by adding tunnels in which you can actually travel on the ceiling provided you have appropriate power-up. And since we're on the subject, you can also collect credits now while rolling, and these are used between the levels to acquire set power-ups and gameplay modifiers, like score multiplier, super speed, shield, or even disabling of some negative track rectangles, among others. IO is a C64 exclusive and a fantastic horizontally scrolling shoot 'em up. Easily one of the best on the system, if you don't mind it being rather difficult. That said, it's not unfair, and if you give it time and learn its ins and outs, it's definitely possible to complete it without losing lives. I mean, for you it's possible. Me, well, I suck at all shooters, and this one's not an exception. The aliens have come in their huge mothership and attacked the Earth, so it's up to you to enter the 4 levels strong mothership, destroy it and its defenses comprised of numerous different crafts, turrets and huge bosses. Hawkeye is a horizontally scrolling shooter platformer hybrid, and a pretty sweet game at that if you're into either of the genres. It is composed out of 12 levels, well 13 if you count the hidden one, and your goal is to kill as many enemies as possible, all the while seeking out 12 pieces of the machinery that would allow you to save the planet. Your planet has been taken over by the evil aliens who rendered the surface inhabitable by the use of radioactives, effectively pushing the remaining survivors underground. You're a synthetic life form created for the sole purpose of killing off the invaders and recovering of the machine that could remove the poisonous radiation. I've always had issues telling one from another, but Ghouls and Ghosts is actually set after the events of Ghosts and Goblins. It's naturally an arcade original that was so popular that it received ports to virtually all home systems of the time. And it wasn't free like we have today, it was well over 10. Anyway, it's an action-adventure platformer in which, playing as Sir Arthur, you must defeat the demonic armies and their leader Lucifer, and find a way to recover your love princess Primprin's soul after Lucifer took it right in front of your eyes. C64 Sport contains all stages of the original, and it's devilishly demanding difficulty too. It's a rather fugly release, but plays quite well, so it can be excused in this instance. Talking about decent arcade conversions, one cannot not mention Gauntlet, which similarly to Wonderboy we spoke about a little while ago, is a nearly perfect port. It's a top-down action-adventure game in which up to 2 adventurers have to go through a gigantic for the time dungeon composed out of over 500 levels of pure madness. With enemies coming from each and every direction in an unimaginable numbers, tons upon tons of pickups, and a fantastic co-op mechanics, Gauntlet on C64 was a fun freaking-tastic adventure like no other. Julius Erving vs Larry Bird 1-on-1, as the title clearly stipulates, is a one-on-one basketball game between the 2 sport legends. Now, I'm not a fan of sport games overall, and other than the multi-discipline ones, I usually tend to skip them. But I did play this one a lot, as a buddy of mine at the time used to love it, so it was often in our joint play rotation. And for 1984, I gotta say that it was a pretty fantastic sports game, even if not one I will be replaying anytime soon, if ever. Green Beret, or Russian Attack as you might have known it as, is believe it or not another amazing port from the arcades. I mean, since we're getting closer and closer to the top 150, most of these conversions will be pretty good, so I should stop being surprised by it. Anyway, the game is set in the mid-80s and depicts a conflict between a huge Russian army and a single Green Beret soldier who's surprisingly capable of taking them all with grace, style and efficiency John Wick wouldn't be ashamed of. Constant onslaught of enemies is what you're dealing with here, but extra weapons and ammo and your unbreakable will should allow you to contain this beast of a game and beat all 4 of its levels. We've spoken about Test Drive 2 a little while ago, and my feelings about its predecessor are sadly the same, and it's just not a game that I enjoy. Still, it's a monumentally important racing simulation featuring 5 different cars to drive around in, 2-lane cliffside road of death, and police chases spread over 5 stages separated by gas stations. It's an important stepping stone in the history of the genre, but also incredibly slow and annoying one. Test Drive might have received universal acclaim for its realism, but it's not the sentiment that I share. Slap Fight, also known as Alcon, is a vertically scrolling shoot-'em-up and a truly enjoyable entry into the genre. It may not look the best, but it features all levels, enemy waves and weapons found in the arcade classic, and its punishing difficulty too. It's not one of those unfair games though, and if you take your time and learn all the patterns and mechanics, you can do quite well in it. Story-wise, after losing the colony of Orak to aliens, 5 years have passed and humanity prepared for another attack. And it arrived sooner than predicted, targeting Pooyan colony. This time, however, we were ready, and Alcon, so a light league of cosmic nations, sent their best fighter pilot to stop the invasion. And that pilot is you. The Great Escape is an isometric action-adventure in which you play as a POW in a World War II German prison camp. The idea here is to escape the captivity using any and all means necessary, all the while following all the rules of the prison not to raise suspicion and slash or alarm. And there are a lot of different ways that you can plan out your route to freedom, be it by backdoors, cracked fences, hidden tunnels, or any other way. While the Great Escape uses high-res graphics, it also resorts to utilizing just a single color for its gameplay window, which makes it a rather uninspiring looking game. Still, gameplay, puzzles, and the need to carefully plan out your actions more than make up for it, and it's an experience like no other. Brace yourselves, as I'm about to say something that may shake you to the core. Battleships on the C64 is the best rendition of the pen and paper classics that I've ever played, and I just played one recently on a plane a few weeks back. This one brings some nice changes to the classic formula by using more interesting and Tetris-inspired shapes for ships and ability to place them at diagonals. Larger play area and ability to salvo more shots at once also make this by design slow game appear to be more action-packed than it actually is. Still, it's a sweet iteration of the classic, and especially if you have someone to play it against in a traditional 8-bit "it's my turn, turn away dude" style. Who Dares Wins is a vertically scrolling war-themed shooter and an excellent commando-like game. It's also surprisingly one of the very few old games that I can genuinely say they play as good today as they did back in the day. It's appropriately fast, hella fun and addictive, and just the right difficult to provide the challenge but not frustrate you. Since I don't know the in-game story at all, let's just all agree here and now that it's just your box standard lone hero against an army of evil fare and move to the next title. Fist 2 The Legend Continues is a sequel to The Way of the Exploding Fist and a game that opted for a considerably less cool title this way around. That said, it more than made up for it with gameplay, substituting single-screen one-on-one combat with something that's a mixture of it with side-scrolling beat-em-up. So you still take opponents one by one, but you also get to travel around a rather large game world seeking evil warlord who's responsible for enslaving of your people. It's a very interesting mishmash of genres, and one that's surprisingly not crap at all. Batman, aka Batman the Movie, is my most favorite game about the Cape Crusader of the last millennia. And I know there had been technically better games released on other platforms, especially on the consoles, but this one in particular holds a special place in my memories. I even had nightmares about it as a kid, waking up screaming that I can't find Joker. Well, it was Jack Napier really, as I was dreaming about the first stage, but you know what I mean. Tomato potato. It's a mix of genres with a notable abundance of platforming sections and a game that quite faithfully follows the movie of the same title. G.I. Joe is an action-adventure shooter for up to 2 players, in which each of the gamers can take control of a character from one of the sides, Joe or Cobra. There are 2 game modes, either less fun vehicle combat in which you're destroying enemy tanks, radar stations, bases and your own will to live, or a much more fun, one-on-one combat where the iconic heroes and villains clash in 1v1 format. The loser of said battles gets imprisoned and the battles take place until one of the sides runs out of characters, which is a lie, as neither ever does. Whenever you are close to winning, captured enemies just escape one by one, thus making G.I. Joe a never-ending grind. A fun one, no doubt about that, but grind nonetheless. But Street Brawler, or as some of you may know it, Bop and Rumble, or Street Hustle, is a side-scrolling beat-em-up. And while the main character that you play as is described in the manual as the world's coolest martial artist, he looks more like a failed entrant in the American Gladiator show. It's a very odd kind of a beat-em-up in which you fight a truly unusual cast of characters, from old ladies and blind folk through dogs and baseball players, all the way to gorillas. Yeah, you don't discriminate and kick the living shit out of all of their asses. There are but a few good brawlers on C64, and this is definitely one of them. In the previous video we've covered Auf Wiedersehen Monty, so it's time to tackle its predecessor, Monty on the Run. And he is on the run, that is. And from both no less, police, as he's a dirty thief, and also a decent presentation, as the backgrounds are all just the most boring shade of black. The sprites are high-res though, so I suppose it was the price for details. Monty on the Run is a flip-screen action platformer, in which you're going through a variety of screens, avoiding enemies and collecting money. As you do all that, you must also pick 5 out of 21 items for your so-called Freedom Kit to win the game and escape captivity. Choplifter, or more accurately Choplifter, is a side-scrolling action shooter in which you must go behind the enemy lines in your supercopter and rescue hostages, all the while fighting off constantly approaching enemies. The gimmick here is that you can carry up to 16 of these POWs at once, and that while you collect them, you're vulnerable to enemy fire. While the gameplay formula of Choplifter is rather basic and the learning curve is virtually non-existent, the playability and addictiveness of this one is through the roof, and it's one of the best early C64 games ever made. Parallax is a sci-fi top-down multi-directional arcade shoot-em-up. The AI has taken over, and the world is controlled by the computer known as the Big One. And since its code and security measures are way too difficult for you to crack, you must find scientists who can. The Big One keeps throwing enemies at you at an alarming rate, however, so you need to dispose of them promptly, cause they're more than capable of ganging up on you, and that never ends well. It's worth noting that in Parallax, you can get out of your ship and walk around, which is an interesting design choice. You can also buy improved weapons and shield recharges too, to stay on top of the AI menace and its forces. While the premise and the graphics of Parallax are top-notch, the gameplay feels a bit odd, as if it was a mashup of random ideas put together and asked to work well. So with 2 episodes behind us and over 100 games covered, what do you think about the best of the best C64 games? Are they what you expected them to be, or do you wanna wait and see how the top 150 still left to cover before voicing your opinions? Make sure to let me know in the comments below. And if you would be so kind and hit like, share, bell and sub when you're down there already, it would mean the world to me, as it helps the channel more than you know. For me this is all for today, so take care of yourself and I'll talk to you soon.